What's going on, guys, and welcome to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for October 29th, 2021. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend. Great Halloween weekend, that is. Halloween tomorrow. I'll be in Salem, Massachusetts for the day, which I'm really looking forward to. I've actually been to Salem on Halloween before, but it's been a few years since I was in college, so I'm looking forward to that. SmackDown on Friday, not a great show. Not a great show by any means. I enjoyed the trick-or-treat fight. Speaking of Halloween, we have these every year on WWE TV. And for the mid-card comedy bullshit, I think it's fine. I wouldn't do this type of stuff with the main event level guys, like what we saw in Dynamite this week. I wasn't a huge fan of that personally. I enjoyed the trick-or-treat fight, and to be completely honest with you, that might have been the highlight of the show for me. We had the Shotzi Blackheart heel turn, which I'll get into momentarily. That was notable. Don't know if I loved it, though. We'll get into that. The show kind of kicked off on a good note with the Shotzi-Charlotte match, something new. But what this show, the sense, the feeling, the message that this show seemed to give me was that the more things change, the more they stay the same. They were touting this new era of SmackDown this week. The new era of Raw is complete fucking dog shit. Monday's show was not a good show at all. And more of the same from Monday nights. More of the same from SmackDown as well. And that's unfortunate. We got some new faces on Fridays, and that's great. But we had the renewal of a lot of old rivalries. We're still getting Corbin and Nakamura after all this time. I talked about that last week. I could not give two fucks about Corbin and Nakamura part 37. Roman and Brock is still going on, and I'm invested in that. I'm compelled by that storyline. Roman Reigns was not on this show. And again, I'll get back to that in a minute. But we're still getting that feud. Again, kind of more of the same, although it has been great so far. That's a feud that we've seen already multiple times dating back to 2015. We have the New Day versus the Usos in the main event of the show. A feud we have seen a million fucking times before. A match we have seen a million fucking times before. Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks. Their exchange, opening SmackDown this week. A feud in a match we have seen many, many times before. They haven't had a full-fledged feud, I understand, since 2016, but the whole point of the draft is to not revisit old feuds. Maybe at a certain point when it makes sense. I think Charlotte and Sasha at a certain point will make sense to do. Not right now, though. I want to see new stuff, which is why I was, really happy for the fact that we got Charlotte and Shotzi on this show. Not a blow-away match, but it was good for the time it was given. Not a great finish, but the post-match stuff set some stuff up for Shotzi and very likely Sasha Banks moving forward. But more of the same from the new era of SmackDown was kind of was really like the biggest message for me about this new era of SmackDown, about this show on Friday. Just more of the same. And speaking of Roman Reigns, who I alluded to a minute ago, no sight of Roman Reigns, of the Tribal Chief, on SmackDown this week. There was a mention. They did further the feud between Roman and Brock without either appearing on the show. I think Roman was there. I think the Bloodline had a 6-man tag team match after the show, if I'm not mistaken, with the Prophets and Drew McIntyre. I saw some video of Paul Heyman getting in the ring and getting stomped on by Montez Ford. So they were there. They just weren't on the televised show. Not that Roman has to be on the show every week. I've said this before, and the champions don't have to be in every segment on every show, every single week. Roman typically is, but because his stuff is so good and I'm invested in it, I don't really mind. To me, he doesn't feel overexposed, and it's always something new. It's always something different. To me, anyway. A lot of people might disagree. I love the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns storylines. Really, whatever he's involved in, I'm invested in. He doesn't have to be on the show, but I think the show really suffered from not having him on it. Now, we found out that Brock was suspended, or being fined, rather, for $1 million fucking dollars for what he did on SmackDown last week. Which seems a little extreme for someone that, has done far worse, even himself, but other people have done far worse on the show, and have not been fined nearly the same amount of money. Sheamus literally bro-kicked a referee about, 10 years ago on SmackDown? It doesn't feel like it was a decade ago, but 9-10 years ago, he bro-kicked a referee, got fined $500,000. And that was a lot of money even a decade ago to think, why is he getting fined $500,000 for kicking a referee? He should be fined in storyline, but $1 million is completely ridiculous. Maybe because in storyline they know that Brock has the money, so he's willing to pay it. But still, that seemed pretty silly. And why should I care about the fines? Why should I care about this wrestler winning money? Most of the time, a lot of this stuff is fake, as far as, It doesn't really matter to me if this wrestler has $500,000 and stuff like that, because to me, storyline-wise, it doesn't really affect anything. Unless you're Corbin and you come into all this fame and fortune and it kind of completely overhauls your character. That's a little different, but as far as the fines and people losing money, it's all completely fake, phony, and all this other shit. So I don't really care too much about that. But back to Roman Reigns. Not that he has to be on the show, but it was very telling that he wasn't. In that when Roman Reigns is not on the show, it was not good at all. And I think SmackDown can still have a good show even without Roman Reigns on it. But if this show is any sign, any indicator of what SmackDown would look like if Roman Reigns ever went down with an injury, this show is fucked. It's fucked. I didn't have as many moments on this show of thinking to myself, why would they do this? The same way I did with Raw on Monday. Because Raw, I thought, was an abysmal show. A lot of stuff happened that I was like, why are they doing this? What was the purpose? Why change this person's music? All this other shit. I had that thought a lot on Monday night. With SmackDown, I didn't have as many moments like that, but a lot of stuff that happened on the show was completely inconsequential. They furthered feuds, but a lot of what we're getting right now on SmackDown, it's only been 1 week of this new era bullshit, it's not exactly enticing. The Roman and Brock thing is far and away the best thing on the show. Charlotte and Sasha, I have zero interest in seeing that as the next feud over the SmackDown Women's Championship. Maybe they're planting the seeds now for a future feud down the road, and hopefully they pivot now to Shotzi and Sasha, and Charlotte goes on to do something else. But I really don't want to see Sasha right back in the SmackDown Women's Championship picture, a title picture she's been involved in consistently for the last year. And now apparently she's back to being a babyface. But anyway, we got Charlotte and Sasha again, New Day and Usos again, Corbin and Nakamura again. I like the Sonya Naomi stuff. We don't really have a reason as to why Sonya is after Naomi. I assume we'll probably never find out. But I really felt like this show is just more of the same. The only real fresh match we got on this show was Charlotte against Shotzi. Even Drew and Ali has been done before, and that match went all of 2 fucking minutes. I was looking forward to Drew and Mustafa Ali, and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be great. Ali can look great in defeat. It went all of 2 minutes. What was even the point? So let's get right into the show, starting with Charlotte and Sasha Banks. They opened the show. Charlotte opened the show, kind of making subtle references to the events of last week and the drama, against her backstage. What Sasha said in her promo sounded like a shoot. Oh, you're holding the women down. I'm sure it wasn't a shoot. I'm sure they told her to say that, or they obviously approved the line. I would be shocked if they went off script there. I'm sure they're just playing off of the rumors and reports of last week, which I think is smart because a lot of people are still talking about it. So anyway, they go back and forth, and Charlotte accurately says, anytime you and I have faced off, Sasha, I have beaten you almost every single time, which is true. And yeah, Sasha did beat Charlotte at least 3 different times on Raw to win the Raw Women's Championship 5 years ago. But the problem back then was that Charlotte always won whenever it mattered most on pay-per-view. Charlotte beat her at SummerSlam. She beat her at Hell in a Cell, in Banks' hometown no less, and at the Roadblock pay-per-view that December. Whenever it mattered most, Charlotte won every single time. And she says this time will be no different. But Sasha said, I think she said something along the lines of like, oh, I won't get a title shot right now, but I do want to bring out someone. I want to see other women succeed. Why she cares all of a sudden about the rest of the division, I don't know. I mean, I thought last week when we got that face-off between Sasha and Charlotte, that Sasha was more of a tweener, or it would be a heel versus heel feud. Yeah, we have babyface versus heel now, but I didn't want to see either one of them turn. Charlotte is not a great babyface, and Sasha literally just went back to being a heel like 2 or 3 months ago. And she's far better, far more engaging as a heel anyway. I think Sasha's a babyface. I know people like her well enough, but she's incredibly boring to me in that role. And she can still have great matches, and I don't know, the whole Shotzi thing just feels like the role should be reversed in my opinion. So here's what happened. Shotzi comes out, she gets the match with Charlotte Flair. It's what they call, and they're going back to this now, I haven't heard this in months, but they're calling it a championship contenders match, where if Shotzi beats Charlotte, she gets a title shot. But then again, Shotzi has heard those words before. She and Tegan Nox beat Natalya and Tamina when they were still the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions in multiple championship contenders matches. This is audio, you can't see me, but I'm doing the quotation motions with my fingers right now, because they weren't exactly championship contenders matches if they never got a fucking title shot. It's not like they got the win over the tag team champions right before the draft and they were drafted, so, we can't do the title match. No, they beat Natalya and Tamina 3 different times, months in advance, well before they got drafted and split up. So, Shotzi, even if she did win, there's nothing guaranteeing that she would have gotten the title shot anyway, to be completely honest with you. But Charlotte Flair does win. It was a good match overall. I enjoyed it. It got a decent amount of time. The 2 spots I didn't like, though, Shotzi's dive to the outside looked fucking terrible. And then the finish was, very weirdly executed. So I think Shotzi threw Charlotte into the ropes, and, Sasha or Charlotte didn't really go into the ropes. She was supposed to, I think, come face-to-face with Sasha. And Sasha wasn't on the ring apron in time, so she had to come up, face off with Charlotte. And then Shotzi goes after Sasha, or she goes after Charlotte, runs into Sasha instead, but doesn't actually make contact with her. They're just kind of staring there at each other. And then Charlotte comes out of nowhere, with an elbow to Shotzi. And that's it, and she wins the match. So, a very weirdly executed finish. Charlotte wins, not a big deal. So then Shotzi, out of nowhere, is all fed up. She gets fucking pissed at Sasha, telling her that she cost her the win. How? I don't really know. It was Shotzi's fault for not capitalizing on when Charlotte was distracted with Sasha, but whatever. Shotzi goes after Charlotte, or rather Sasha Banks, after the match is over. She's yelling at her, telling her that she cost her the match. Why would you do that? You made me lose. And then she viciously attacks her. So Shotzi completes her heel turn here, which isn't a complete surprise. There were rumors and talks of Shotzi going heel post-draft as early as a couple of weeks ago when she got drafted to SmackDown on her own and Tegan Nox went to Raw. We haven't seen on Raw yet, by the way, which is complete bullshit. But we got Shotzi on SmackDown. She just attacked one of the top stars in the company in Sasha Banks. Shotzi is great. I'm a big Shotzi fan. If this means that we're going to get more of her on WWE TV on her own, then I'm in favor of it. But I am a little baffled here. Shotzi, to me, I'm not saying she can't pull off being a heel. To me, though, she's a natural babyface. She hasn't even really been given a chance to be a babyface on her own on SmackDown because she was called up in a tag team. We barely fucking saw them. And now she's on her own and they immediately turn her heel. But what I think I like a lot less than that, like Shotzi turning heel, I'm skeptical of. Even worse than that, though, is that seemingly they're turning Sasha heel, or turning her babyface, rather. She was a babyface earlier this year already. And like I just got done saying, she is a natural heel. Sasha as a babyface does nothing for me. One thing that Sasha is great, she's great at a lot of things. Sasha is fantastic in the ring. She's one of the best they have. But as a character, this incarnation of Sasha since she came back following her hiatus a couple of years ago, since she's come back, she has been incredibly unlikable. Even as a tweener earlier this year, if you want to even call it that. Maybe she'll be a tweener now, who knows, but she was the same. She spoke about it in our interview. It doesn't really change as far as her character and her presentation, which is commendable to her respect. But as a babyface, you should at least be a little bit likable. To me, Sasha is not likable at all. She comes across as completely unlikable in a lot of her promos and segments. It makes it hard for me to cheer for someone like that. Although she is great, maybe that's the whole appeal there. People will cheer for her because she's facing a heel, and Sasha is very good. But I don't know. As a feud, the roles, to me, feel like they should be reversed. I feel like they realized, oh fuck, when we put Bianca and Becky over on Raw, we lost our top babyface in this division. We have Sasha and we have Charlotte. They're both heels. We need a top babyface. I'm not really sure who else that would be. If you look at the SmackDown Women's division, they didn't really have a top babyface. It should have been Shotzi, in my opinion. Shotzi could have been that woman. And it's not like, oh, she's too new. Then you push her. You know what I mean? It's not that hard. They had Bianca occupy that top spot after a while, very quickly after being drafted to SmackDown last year, and she was still relatively new. So that's why I know it's possible. I don't think it was necessary to turn Sasha babyface to kind of even out the pool a little bit. They could have had a lot of other babyfaces in that role on SmackDown. Maybe Bayley when she gets back. I assume Bayley goes to Raw, though, when she returns. Rhea's on Raw. Nikki Ash is on Raw. Bianca went to Raw. They don't have a lot of top babyfaces on SmackDown. They have Shayna, who is a heel, for sure, obviously. They have Charlotte, who is absolutely a heel. I guess they kind of figured, process of elimination, let's turn Sasha Banks babyface. Again, this was not well thought out at all. Natalya, no. I'm not even really sure who else they have on SmackDown. Mia Yim, I think, is still on Raw. Xia Li's coming to SmackDown. She's not ready for that role yet, to be like a top babyface on the show. Aaliyah is fucking terrible. And then, man, Toni Storm. Toni Storm, how the fuck could I forget about Toni Storm? I mean, maybe because we haven't seen her since she got bumped from the Queen's Crown tournament a few weeks ago in a matter of minutes by, let me check my notes, Zelina Vega. You also had Liv Morgan, who was doing a whole lot of nothing on Raw. She could have occupied that spot as well if you didn't draft her. Toni Storm makes perfect sense to be the top babyface of this division on this show. Why are we putting Sasha back in that role? That, to me, is what doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think that's just stupid. I think it's dumb. I think to have Charlotte and Sasha back as the top faces of their respective divisions, they don't have to not be on the same show, but like they can both be heels. You know, I mean, I know Sasha's a far bigger star than anyone I just mentioned, but that's where you create stars. So I'm not a big fan of them turning Sasha again, seemingly. I just think that's stupid. Shotzi getting the spotlight, hey, not a big fan of her turning heel, but if this leads to more television time for her, she's involved in a prominent feud with a prominent star, then I'm all for that. The matches could be very good as well. So, though there is a silver lining to it, but on the surface, I'm not a big fan of that turn of events. Drew McIntyre back out in the ring to issue another open challenge after beating Sami Zayn last week. This time, the open challenge was answered by Mustafa Ali. And I'm thinking, okay, cool. Like, Ali is very good, obviously. Him and McIntyre haven't had a lot of matches together. Maybe like one on Raw earlier this year. But this was incredibly brief. Blink and you missed it. It was literally like a 2-minute match, 2-minute-long match. McIntyre wins with a Kimura, I believe, which was cool. So McIntyre wins with the submission. I like that. The match itself, very disappointing. These two could go in there and have a fucking banger, but they were given all of 2 minutes. So it was a complete waste. McIntyre wins, remains dominant. Good for him. They're clearly having him in a holding pattern right now, racking up wins, bouncing back from the loss to Big E at Crown Jewel, to eventually build him to another match with Roman Reigns, for this time for the Universal Championship. At what point, I don't know. It's not at Survivor Series, speaking of which we have gotten zero talk of the Raw versus SmackDown stuff. They haven't mentioned that shit at all lately. No word on who's on each team. The pay-per-view comes up in 3 weeks, so seems a little weird to me that we haven't gotten any word or update on the Survivor Series build, but again, whatever. They got 3 Raws and 3 SmackDowns left, but this should have started last week. I mean, if they really want to make this pay-per-view meaningful, you got to start early, but I don't know, it's completely pointless. Anyway, so Ali cut a promo afterward. The commentators were all ready to move on. Pat McAfee and Michael Cole talking about the next thing, and then Ali interrupts them with a post-match promo, and he was all frustrated, and he basically said, "These people boo me because my name is Mustafa Ali." So they're going into something here. Maybe it's his idea. I would assume it does. I mean, if it has to do with like if you boo me because of how I look type of shit, which is so dumb. I mean, obviously that's not why people boo him. They boo him because he was a part of that awful Retribution gimmick, and they turned him heel at that point. Ali can be a great babyface. I really feel like he's miscast as a heel. He plays the role well. But the whole you boo me because of my skin color or my name, I feel like it's such a tired card to play because it's not why people boo him. I know that's the heel logic speaking in his head, but it's like it just feels lazy. And maybe it was his idea, but I just feel like it's just, I don't know. I just feel like it's dumb. And they should be doing a lot more with Ali than they are. I mean, the guy is great, and he's completely underutilized in my opinion. We had King Woods and Kofi Kingston out in the ring up next, and I already mentioned the suspension fine thing for Brock Lesnar, so I don't really need to elaborate on that here. We did hear from Paul Heyman, no sign of Roman Reigns, and that was about it. But we had, like I said, Woods and Kingston in the ring, Woods doing his usual king shtick, as we saw last week, and he was doing the coronation with Kofi. This time it wasn't for Woods himself, but rather for Kofi, making him the Hand of the King, Sir Kofi Kingston. So I'm not sure if that's what they're going to be calling him now going forward officially. Because like Xavier I mentioned last week, they were calling him for a day or so King Xavier. And Woods probably spoke up and said, no. It's a very slight change, but he has been saying this for fucking years. I want to be King Woods. Not King Xavier, not King Xavier Woods, King Woods. All hail King Woods is what he was saying for weeks on end, so you run with it, and they did. So they're now calling him officially King Woods. King Xavier lasted all of a week, I think. I don't know if it's been officially changed on WWE.com, but it's now King Woods. So they're doing their whole King shtick, and I'm thinking, are we getting another segment where no one interrupts again? That would be interesting. But at some point, you got to give these guys direction. That direction just so happens to be another feud with the Usos. And don't get me wrong, they work well together. All the matches these two teams have had dating back 5-6 years have been great. But I really have no desire. And I'm thinking about it now, thinking maybe there's more to this, but it's hard to give WWE the benefit of the doubt sometimes with this type of stuff. I really don't care to see, at this point in time, another Usos New Day match for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. They made this their own problem when they didn't really draft a lot of teams from Raw to SmackDown. We have the Usos, the New Day, Carrillo and Garza. I'm not honestly even sure who else is left. They drafted all the other teams to Raw. I don't know who else SmackDown got in return. But we're getting a match. We got a match between these two teams later on in the night because Roman was not on the show, so they focused the show on New Day and Usos instead. I think about it now, before we even get to the match, and I'm thinking, if this is leading to another long Usos New Day feud over the tag titles, no fucking thanks. I know Woods is the king now, and we got Sir Kofi Kingston. It doesn't really change the dynamic of the feud because the Usos are still the heels and the New Day are still the faces. So I can't say I really care too much about that. But if this is a part of a bigger build with Roman Reigns and Big E at Survivor Series, then I like it. Because if we are getting champion versus champion to the pay-per-view, and they have not announced that at all yet, haven't even alluded to it, aside from the commercials, then it would make sense that, if we're getting Roman Reigns versus Big E, champion versus champion, assuming neither guy loses their championship before them, which they shouldn't, then they would be going back to the Usos and New Day feud. They did the 6-man tag team match on Raw a couple of weeks ago, completely out of the blue, kind of planting the seeds for Survivor Series. But we might get, on Talking Smack, which I'll talk about tomorrow, I already watched it, Matt Camp brought up the possibility of Roman being jealous or, upset with Woods calling himself the king when Roman is really the tribal chief of the show. So we might soon get a Woods-Roman match, not as a prolonged program, but maybe as a one-off match in the main event of SmackDown one of these weeks, which I think would be great. Now, Woods and Roman doesn't really feel like a pay-per-view match. Maybe Kofi and Roman, not Woods and Roman. But maybe that's where this is leading. New Day ended up winning, spoiler alert, later on in the show. So maybe that's where this goes. I really don't want to see New Day right back in the tag team title picture, because my problem with this whole feud is that Woods is now king of the ring. I don't need to see him as Intercontinental Champion, but I think it would be nice if they at least tested the waters a little bit more with him as a single star. He beat fucking Finn Balor, for God's sakes. Why wouldn't you capitalize off that? Not by putting him in another tag team title feud with a team they've already faced a million times, but rather a team that they, not even a team, but like you put him in the ring and either go after the Intercontinental Champion or continue to rack up singles wins. Why wouldn't you continue to build off of that, is my question. And the answer is because they have no other teams to rival the Usos, so here we are again. Speaking of tag teams, we had a trick or street fight, in a tag team match. Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss beating the duo of Shinsuke Nakamura, the Intercontinental Champion, and Rick Boogs. Like I said earlier, I enjoy this type of stuff. I don't like it when they do it in the main events or, with the main event guys. I think that's dumb. This is all comedy holiday bullshit. With the right people in the right environment, I think it works. I think this worked. I really don't care about Corbin and Nakamura rekindling their rivalry already over the Intercontinental Championship. But if they're going to do it, at least make it interesting. I thought this was nice. They utilized the pumpkins, the kendo sticks, or the candy cane sticks, or whatever the fuck they called it, and all this other shit. Or what is that shit called? Candy corn? A little orange shit? I always thought that was gross. I never ate that shit. But they did that here. They had the match. Corbin and Moss ended up winning with Moss pinning Rick Boogs. Thankfully not Nakamura again. The heels picked up the win, probably to give them more momentum before Corbin inevitably goes back after the Intercontinental Championship. Not back after, but rather for the first time. I don't know if Corbin has ever contended, actually, for the Intercontinental Championship. Or he did. He did, because he faced Dean Ambrose for the championship back at WrestleMania 33, and he lost. But yeah, so Corbin and Moss win here with the help of two masked individuals wearing pumpkin heads. They missed the opportunity to wear scream masks, but they do that a lot in this company, so maybe not. Maybe they don't have to do it again here. So it was Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo, the third team on SmackDown that I forgot about. I wouldn't really call Nakamura and Boogs and Corbin and Moss tag teams, but maybe it's a matter of time before they enter the tag team division as well. But yeah, Garza and Carrillo costing the babyfaces the win. Why? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out next week, and maybe we won't. I have no idea what they would even have to do with any of this. Maybe they got paid off by Corbin. That was my guess. We'll see. But I like Garza and Carrillo, the heel duo of them. The heel duo of Garza and Carrillo. So we'll see where they go with that. We had 2 women's matches on the show. Surprise, surprise. Shayna Basler versus Naomi. The problem was that this went all of a minute. Literally like a little over 60 seconds. Sonya Deville inserted herself as the special guest referee. Screwing over Naomi again. We still have no idea why she's after Naomi. I don't think they're even going to bother to explain it at this point. They're not even teasing like, oh, what's your issue with me? Like, she'll say that in passing, but they haven't really made that the focal point of the feud, which tells me they're not going back to it, so don't expect an answer. Shayna getting back on track with a win I think is great. This could have gone a lot longer than it did. They could have dragged it out a little bit, have Naomi come close to beating Shayna, only for Sonya as the special guest referee to screw her over. This was so short, blink and you missed it. Again, I mean, on a 2-hour show, they can afford to have matches that go more than 60 seconds, I promise you. This did further the feud. It was fine. It was well done. I just wish it was a little longer. We get to the main event, The New Day versus the Usos. Stop me if you've heard this before. In a championship contenders match. Non-title, but championship contenders match in the sense that if they won, they'll probably get a title shot at some point in the near future, which I almost guarantee you we will get that before Survivor Series. They like to do a lot of title matches before Survivor Series, with the hook being, oh, if they lose, then we're going to get a different champion versus champion match at Survivor Series. So that's usually why they do it. So maybe we'll get that match next week or another week before the pay-per-view. The usual quality match from, the Usos and New Day. They always work well together. It was, basic stuff. I thought it was solid. Enjoyed it for what it was, and the New Day won. So, honestly, by this point in the show, I was quickly falling asleep. I've had a very, crazy, wild, busy week, so I was fucking exhausted anyway going into the show, and the fact that it just wasn't that exciting of an episode did not help matters. So this was fine. The New Day win, and that's it. No Roman, no nothing, just the standard win for New Day, and that was it. So, a very forgettable edition of SmackDown this week. Like I said, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because it felt like we had a lot of old feuds being revisited again. Not that that's a bad thing, but to do it in the new era, they're calling it a new era. They shove that shit down your throat. To call it a new era and then go back to 7 different feuds that we've gotten before, to me makes absolutely no sense. I'm not a fan of that at all. This was not a bad show, like I said. There weren't a lot of things that I said to myself, oh man, that's shit or that's garbage, but a lot of this stuff you will not remember by Monday. I promise you. So a very kind of miss of an edition of SmackDown. No Roman Reigns. Certainly did not help. And it's really all I have to say about it. So maybe we'll get more build for Survivor Series starting next week. The pay-per-view's in 3 weeks from this weekend. We have gotten 0 mention of the Raw and SmackDown stuff on TV lately, which is fine, but if you're going to build an entire pay-per-view around brand supremacy, you should probably try to make it important. It feels like even WWE doesn't care about it anymore. They're not announcing or having qualifying matches for who's going to be on Team Raw and Team SmackDown. I almost guarantee you they're going to start that next week. Do either the qualifying matches or have someone, I don't know, they're going to do something to where they're going to start having the, qualifying matches or just name people on the teams or whatever. They'll probably start that next week, but I'm just not sure why they didn't start it sooner, because it's going to feel like it's rushed, per usual. But at any rate, guys, thank you for checking on my review of this edition of SmackDown for October 29th, 2021. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Hit the bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. We got interviews going up almost every day, new content going up every single day. This week alone, we had interviews go up with Indy Hartwell and Rey Mysterio, so check those out. Jeff Jarrett coming soon, QT Marshall, Booker T, all coming soon here to the channel. So again, subscribe and never miss a video. Tomorrow, we're also going to have my Talking Smack review, going up pretty early before I leave to Salem for Halloween, which I'm looking forward to, like I said. So keep an eye out for that as well. Have an awesome, safe, scary, and spooky Halloween, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.